So I encourage you to think about what is challenging you and your horse right now. And once you find that answer, write it down on a piece of paper and then start thinking about how can you break that down. Welcome back to another episode in Sundancer's journey from wild to willing partner. I'm Courtney Hardy, founder of Nirvana Mustang Sanctuary, and this series is all about showing you how we can train our horses using empathetic and relationship-based training methods. And my goal with Sundancer is to show you guys how effective these methods are and how much our horses value it when we focus on presence and connection over the physical achievements that they can perform in 30 or less days. Alrighty, so in this session we started out with some simple targeting. The low targets are a little bit tricky for him to figure out. As you can see, he started to paw at it there instead of touching it with his nose, so I brought it back up, made it a little bit easier for him. We don't want to start causing him to be frustrated, so what I'm going to do is just start working that target lower and lower at a very slow pace, so I won't just start with it near the ground. And next we're moving into working on some touch, so I'm working down his legs, under his belly. I've discovered he's got an itchy spot under there as well. And we're also working on creating a little bit of personal space here. Since Sundancer enjoys his scratches so much, he tends to walk right up and kind of push into me sometimes with his shoulder. It's no big deal. It's not bad. All we're going to do is ask him to back up out of our space and then reward for him being out of my space. And gradually, as time goes on, we'll work up the amount of time that he needs to be standing out of my space before he gets his reward. So he will learn to stand at a distance and not run right up on top of me. Okay, next is the spray bottle. I'm still spraying it away from his body right now. We always want to start with an easier behavior. So if I just walk up right up to him and start spraying him, he might get a little startled. But if I begin introducing the spray bottle by spraying it in the air, then I'm able to work my way down either side and actually work my way into spraying him without going over his stress threshold. As you can see, he's doing very good with that. He's not having any negative reactions to the spray bottle, and here I am actually spraying his body. And I'm asking him, just like we did in the beginning with expanding touch, to come forward and position his body next to me by using my hand as a target, instead of me going around and moving down his body. That way he's choosing to move forward and he is choosing to be sprayed further back on his body with this fly spray. Next up, we're going to be working on the lead rope. So as soon as I pick it up, he's immediately wanting to target it. That's a great sign. He's not holding any anxiety about it. And then I just want to get him used to feeling it on his body. So I've been rubbing it along him on both sides and kind of using my fingers to scratch at the same time. Sometimes he gets a little bit unsure. As you saw a second ago, I went to rub it on his body and he took a step back. That just tells me that we need to spend a lot more time working with this lead rope and getting him comfortable before we actually begin the leading process. And after we've repeated that process several times successfully, we'll just target the lead rope a few more times, get him to acknowledge it, and then it's time to move on to haltering. I'm still not putting the halter all the way over his ears on the first try that I ask him to halter. We want to start out by building his confidence and just having him put his nose through the noseband. And then I do start sliding it over his ears, and you'll see me put it on and then wait. What I'm doing is I'm waiting for his head level to come back down. He got into a habit of when I would slide it over his ears, he would look away. And since that was the behavior that was rewarded, that's the habit he got into. So now we're working on making this haltering process look a little bit better and ask him to keep his head tilted a little bit towards me and keep it a little bit lower. I'm also preparing him for having the halter staying on his body by letting it sit there for a few seconds after I ask him to halter. And here again, you'll see me working on a little bit of personal space. So I'm pushing him out of my space using my hips, and then I'm reinforcing that with a click and a handful of hay pellets. Eventually, he will understand to wait. Here I'm trying to ask him to back up a little bit more. And you saw he was not too certain on what I was asking, but he is doing better with personal space by the end of that session. So for these next 2 sessions, we'll be running through the same activities as this last one. The only new thing is in the last session of the video, we'll be adding in a little bit of lunging circles using the target only at a walk. And what I'm doing there is implementing the voice cue for walk. That way I have that to utilize during the leading process. But while these sessions play, I wanted to talk to you guys about 3 super important principles. And remember that principles are laws to abide by, or you can kind of think of them as the rules of training in these methods. The first principle that I'm going to talk about today is how we must break down the desired behavior into the smallest possible steps for the horse. Think about it like this. If you never took any math classes until your sophomore year of high school and then you were tossed into an algebra class, you would feel so way in over your head. You would be so overwhelmed. You wouldn't feel confident that you could do algebra, and it would probably be a nightmare for you to try to learn to do algebra. However, we take math throughout grade school, throughout middle school, and then when we get to high school, we have all of the necessary components and tools to be able to combine them all in order to successfully learn to do algebra. We have to think of our horses' training in that same exact way. If we just run out there and throw a halter on them and expect that they learn to lunge on day 1, the horse is going to feel very overwhelmed. They're going to lose confidence in themselves and in you because they're learning algebra on day 1. So it's very important that if we want to truly teach our horses a behavior and have them learn it comfortably, calmly, below their threshold, and be confident with the end result, we must introduce things one tiny step at a time. And I'll just use the lead rope here as an example. So day 1 with the lead rope, if you remember, I just had it sitting in his feed bowl over there, just sitting there. I rewarded him if he chose to walk over and investigate it, but I didn't even pick it up. I didn't touch it. We didn't use it. It just sat over there so he could check it out a little bit. Then the next day, I was able to ask him to walk over and target the lead rope in his bowl. So that's the second little step. Then I began picking up the lead rope and asking him to target it. And then once he was comfortable with that, I started rubbing it along his neck. And then once he was comfortable with that, I was able to start rubbing it along his body. And the next introduction is what you see me doing right now. I'm kind of tossing it about, making it wiggle, dragging it across the ground. So these are all the higher steps to getting used to the lead rope. And notice all of this is happening before I ever clip this lead rope to his face and ask him to respond to pressure from the lead rope. If your horse is uncomfortable with one of your tools, such as the lead rope, then it's going to be hard for them to learn how to do the desired behavior, which is leading. And my Mustang Sage is a great example of this. He was with a trainer for 6 months, and basically all he did was get chased around a round pen and got streamers waved in his face and didn't really get any release from pressure. So he's very skeptical about a lead rope. He's very skeptical about a carrot stick. So if I try to use any of those tools too much before he's completely comfortable with them, he will just take off and want nothing to do with me for several days after. So that's how fragile some of these guys' trust can be, and we really have to work up to the desired behavior one small progression at a time. So I encourage you to think about what is challenging you and your horse right now. And once you find that answer, write it down on a piece of paper and then start thinking about how can you break that down. And once you begin breaking it down into steps, look at all those steps and ask how can you break down those steps even further. And what you'll end up with at the end is a very nice progression of how you can teach your horse the desired behavior, one small step at a time. The next principle that I want to talk about is always offering choice to our horses. This is somewhat of a foreign concept in modern horsemanship, especially in performance horsemanship or those in higher level sports. We tend to have demands that we put on our horses, and we fully expect that they reach and exceed those demands on our timeline. However, this is a really human way of thinking, and if we want to begin valuing our relationship with our horse and we're really searching for that deep connection and bond that we see in movies, we can't have that frame of mind. We must offer our horses choice. An example I like to use a lot is, let's say you're trying to make a friend and this is the first day you've met this friend. You don't really know each other 100% yet. You've done a couple things together, but you still don't fully know each other. And you want to take your friend out to lunch, but your friend says they're not really feeling it today, maybe next time. And then you just kidnap them and force them to go to lunch with you. That person is no longer going to be your friend. And that's how we have to think about this with our horses. So we need to offer them choice. If they don't feel like doing something on any given day, that's okay. Just like us, they have off days. They have days where maybe they don't feel good. They have days where maybe they just feel like they need to conserve energy. And so it's not a bad thing for your horse to say, no, I don't want to do something. So that's why if Sundancer walks off to the other side of the pen, I'm not going to hunt him down. I'm not going to chase him. I'm just going to hang out where I'm at. I might offer him a target and see if he wants to come back and join me, but I will in no way force him. He always has that choice to not participate in a session if he doesn't want to. And the last principle I want to talk about in this video kind of aligns with giving your horse choice. And this principle is, instead of forcing your horse, how can you inspire them? If you offer your horse choice and they routinely choose to leave and not participate, what are some ways that maybe your sessions aren't very enjoyable for your horse? Now, this takes some personal reflection and some brutal honesty, and sometimes we might not like the answer, but that's okay. It's necessary if we want to evolve as a horseman. Once you've identified some pain points for your horse or things that are really causing them not to enjoy your sessions together and causing them not to want to spend time with you, then you can start thinking about what can you introduce into your sessions that your horse will enjoy. So you can start tipping that scale from not wanting to participate, not wanting to be with you, to wanting to participate and wanting to be with you. Food rewards are usually a very good answer and a great place to start. However, you can always introduce other things such as more breaks throughout a session. In the wild, horses spend about 15 minutes grazing and then about 15 minutes just hanging out. And that cycle repeats throughout the entire 24 hours. And then they sleep some in there too for about 15-minute bouts. So you can see how our modern training sessions that sometimes run over into 2, 3, or 4 hours for some performance horses, that schedule just really doesn't jive with their natural biology. So we can introduce lots of breaks in there. We can stop and relax with them a little bit. We can add in some hand grazing sessions, some matching steps, some work on just pure connection instead of focusing on their external achievements. Let me know what you guys think of these 3 principles in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.